Hey, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Doug. Thanks for being out here, Doug, and hanging out with me tonight.
Yeah, you're having me. I'm not having you. It's I gotta
I
say,
know, dude. See, I'm already drinking, and I'm like getting my words all discombobulated.
I got like.
So,
Fortunately, there's no rum to go or Kahlua to go in the coffee, but I will,
right?
I'll deal my best.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna take it easy so we can not enjoy the conversation. Let's let it marinate here.
Sure.
So we were talking just a minute ago, kind of off camera, and I was going to share the story because, as someone who spent some time in Japan and understands a little bit about the inner workings or whatnot, so one of the first times I went to Japan, I was uh, down the road about maybe I don't know 15 minutes from that one of the train stops. That's where Mr. Donut is. And
Yep.
as you and I were talking a moment ago, Mr. Donut is a Japanese donut shop that's a franchise. It's kind of like McDonald's except for donuts,
Yeah.
and it's all over the country. And so in America, as we were just talking a moment ago, donut shops like are usually open either 24 hours a day or they open like 5 or 6 in the morning
Yep.
because that's where you're going to be the most traffic is mornings when people are picking up donuts to take them to work, church, their own homes, whatever the case may be. So, I tell my wife at the time, I said, hey, tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up in the morning. I'm going to go run down and get some donuts from Mr. Donuts. And she was like, oh, okay. So I just was like, all right. So I hop on my bike and I'm riding down, 15 minutes down the downtown area. I ride my bike at like 6 a.m. Like I'm on my bike. So I'm like, I'll get there around 6:30 or whatever. I'll be ready to go, get me a bag of donuts, bring them back to the family, right? So I might go over there, like ride my bike all the way through town and, enjoying the nice Sunday morning or whatever. And I get to the train station where the Mr. Donut is adjacent to it. And I get off my bike, I park it, I go and I grab the handle and I'm like,
Yeah.
and it's like, I'm like, why can't I open this up? I'm like, look inside and it's like dark. And I'm like, what? So I'm like, what is going on? Like, is Mr. Donut's closed? So I look at the time and it doesn't open until 9 o'clock. And I'm like, what donut shop opens at 9 o'clock in the morning? Because in Japan, that's like they don't really do it because of its donuts for breakfast. They do it because donuts is like a snack. It's like
Yeah.
the Japanese like to eat them as like a pastry snack kind of thing. It's not necessarily a breakfast food per se. So for them, it's just like, oh, it opens up like a breakfast time kind of thing. And I remember like I'm sitting there like I'm not even gonna be able to eat this now. So I had to go to a gas station and go pick up something for breakfast because I was like so disappointed.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, man.
for anybody that doesn't know, even the gas stations in Japan are cleaner than 90% of even your supermarkets.
Oh my gosh, it is. I would
But
literally let something fall off my plate and there like I dropped my onigiri and I would probably pick it up and eat it off the floor because it's so clean. I'm not even kidding you. It's so clean. So
The only one that could attest to that is JP, but he was on last night.
yes.
Yeah, a little fun fact. I live about a mile and a half, maybe 2 miles, maybe from the original, very first Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh.
So, and also a side fact for Mr. Donut, the the two people that opened Dunkin' Donuts, the two founders, the brother-in-law split off the partnership, and what he did was he opened Mr. Donut. And so
Really?
Mr. Donut it has a relation to Dunkin' Donuts. And then it was sold off, I forget however many years ago. And then just recently, Dunkin' Donuts bought it back. So Mr. right now is a part of the Dunkin' Donuts family, which
Wow.
technically it always was because one of the partners of Dunkin' Donuts opened Mr. Donut. So
That's so wild. It like came full circle,
came full
It's kind of
circle, yeah.
crazy. Well, because I know in Japan, like again, if you've been in Japan, and of course, I haven't been in Japan in a year, so things could have changed. But donuts aren't like super popular. It's like designer type of breads are real popular. They have bread shops they call pan in Japanese everywhere, and quite frankly, most of those are sweet breads and like kind of dessert type breads. So those are really more to the Japanese liking because it's not as sweet.
And
Donuts are super sweet.
Sell a lot of donuts either. They'll sell, like you said, they'll sell the little funky pastries and these little food pastries.
Right.
And it also the donuts, like you said, they treat them more of as a snack, not as a
Right.
breakfast. So if
Right.
you get a donut in America, it's a good sized donut. You
Sure.
get
Yeah.
like a munchkin in at Mr. Donut, and it's tiny. And or because the Mr. Donut around the corner from my in-laws' place,
Mm-hmm.
they'll do like like a little small fry basket, a little tiny little,
Right.
and they'll fit like 6 of them in there, and or whatever, and they'll do crazy mixes, and
Yeah.
and all this stuff. And like you said, they treat it like a dessert, so it's like going to the Cheesecake Factory, looking at all the different
Yes.
You go to a Mr. Donut, you look at the donuts and the munchkins, or I'll call them munchkins.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 1,000 little different, varieties and things that you can do. But even the donuts, they're little tiny handheld, might be as, as round as the palm of your hand. It's
Sure.
not expecting, like you say, you go to a donut shop and you're getting something thicker than a $50, and
Mm-hmm.
it's the size of a brick. But over there, it's it's different. But yeah, there's no. But when you said 9 o'clock, I kind of chuckled, because I don't think there's a Dunkin' Donuts here in the States that opens any later than 5 a.m.
Right. I mean, there was I don't know. Do you all have Krispy Kreme up in your neck of the woods, or do you know what that is?
Kinda. They tried to get in here about 20 years ago, and some of them flopped really hard because
Right. Well, Dunkin' Donuts being there and have a
yeah.
stronghold makes sense.
Oh,
So where I'm from, Krispy Kreme, as far as a quote unquote chain, because there's a bunch of local mom and pop places, which I'm sure
yep,
is the same in your neck of the woods too,
yep.
that everybody like swears by, But there's a Krispy Kreme where I'm from in the Southern Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky area. And it's so funny you say that, because there is a one in particular, Krispy Kreme, that's like a standalone place that you don't see a whole lot of those anymore. But there's, they'll be around, and there's one in Louisville in particular. And my wife and I would go down there at like 2 o'clock in the morning. We just got done watching a movie, and she's like, "You want to go get some donuts?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's go to Krispy Kreme." So we like drive 20 minutes into Louisville, Kentucky from Southern Indiana,
Yeah,
and you're just watching them like roll off the conveyor belts, and they're just like drizzling the glaze. It's so warm. Oh my gosh, dude, it was legit, dude. So I mean, it was nice, but like it goes back to what you're saying. Like they're always open, they're always open, or you open up super early. So to us as Americans, it's a really foreign concept to go to a donut shop, so to speak, and then it not be open until like 9 o'clock or whatever. And you're like, what? What is this? But this is also the country that told me that they serve breakfast hot dogs at McDonald's. So.
I haven't seen one. I've never seen a breakfast hot dog at a McDonald's in Japan, but I know that there's a pastry shop. My in-laws' place is down the street, like literally a block and a half, maybe, from one of the train stations. And so, kind of, their place is here, the train station's here, and kind of in a triangle at the end of the train station parking lot is a bakery, and it's awesome. It's a cool.
Yes.
But you walk in, and you get the mochi pan, and you get the ampan and stuff like that, and then you'll also see like a hot dog in like a baked bread with like mayonnaise and all these other little things, and that's just we'll run over for breakfast, and I'm like, a hot dog for breakfast? Why would I eat? But when you're sitting on the train, you're waiting. But it's that's the cultural difference, the way they treat
for sure
food. It's cool to be there when you go. If anybody gets to go, and I mean, as you know, there's more vending machines per square foot in Japan than anywhere else. I mean, every corner you turn, there's a vending machine. But then it's like you sit there and look at the variety that you can pull out of a vending machine: hot coffee, cold coffee, 50 different drinks, and God knows how many teas. And it's just you see some of the big ones, and it's just like, I'm staring at it like a kid in a candy store, like, oh my God. And
I had this really embarrassing moment to kind of go off of what you just said, which is funny because literally you can get almost anything out of a vending machine in Japan. Like if you look long enough, you could probably find something, right?
Yep.
And so using that thinking, I go to this high, you know, I'm sure if you've been in Japan and drove around on the highway, they have lots of like rest stops where there's like restaurants, like really nice restaurants that are, you know, quality food is being served to you instead
Yeah,
of like
it's not no
whatever.
garages.
Right, exactly. And so like, so there's a machine where you can put like a 500 yen in, or you know, 800 yen or whatever, and get yourself a meal, right?
Mm.
And there's like this, there's like a little, which I don't want to say stupid because you just don't know, but naive is the better word. So I put my 800 yen in or whatever, and I honestly thought, because there was like this slot at the bottom. So I honestly thought I just put the money in and the food was just gonna fall out. But I didn't realize I had to go take the ticket to the counter, and then they would proceed to make it for me. But I pay up front. I take my ticket and go to the counter, and then they would make my udon or my katsukari or whatever. But I'm sitting there, and like there's like a line behind me of like probably 10 hungry Japanese businessmen, and I'm all like this, like where's my food? And I'm like, oh, sticking my hand in there, like, is it inside or what?
Yeah,
and they're probably like, what the hell, Round Eye? Can you get the hell out of the way? We're hungry. You know?
They're screaming at the Baka Gaijin, just trying to look
I know, they're just like
the hole at the bottom of the vending machine, waiting for the food to fall out.
Yeah, he's probably like, is this guy mentally challenged? Why do he keep sticking his hand inside the machine, like feeling around inside there? And I'm just like, oh my gosh.
Why do they always send us the dumb ones?
I know, exactly. Like, can we ever get a smart guy come over here? Why we got this guy over here holding up the line for 10 minutes while he's like molesting the machine, touching all the everything on there?
Yeah.
Trying to figure it out.
So I mean, you see some of that. Like I saw a ticket vending machine like that at the Ramen Museum in Yokohama, where you know, inside the museum, there's like 7 or 8 different restaurants, and all of the restaurants represent a region in Japan, do their specialty ramen stuff. And so instead of walking in the restaurant and sitting down and getting served, outside there was a vending machine, and also it had photos of what your meal was going to look like, and then it was, you know, for this, you know, for each of these restaurants, and then you paid and got a ticket. You went in and handed it to the hostess, and then got your table. And it was just, you know, it was different, but it was like cool. It's not like, you know, you don't have a bunch of people clamoring around. You know, you'll get service when you walk in, and the food was great. I mean, when you think of a place like that, you go to like Six Flags or some kind of amusement park, you're going to expect cheap, cheesy food. But when you go to some of the stuff like Monkey Park or Ramen Museum or stuff like that, you're going into this. That might look like a rinky-dink, tiny little shop that was built into a closet. But there's still, the food that comes out is not rinky-dink closet food. It's actually a good meal, you know. And some of it is extremely cheap. I think. Well, I mean, when I went to the Ramen Museum, that was probably that was 2011 when we went there. Some friends of ours were with us, and it was like 800 or 900 yen for a meal. And you kind of expect a cheesy meal for $8, but nope. No, it was actually a fun meal. You actually had to sit there and you're staring, trying to figure out how you want your ramen to taste. You know.
Oh yeah. There's so many different toppings and flavors and everything, right?
Yeah.
Especially with the Ramen Museum. I mean, they're going to be like the bee's knees when it comes to ramen options or whatever. So yeah, I mean, go ahead.
I was going to say, and my wife told me that at the Ramen Museum, after a period of time, I think it was once a year, they'll look at sales, and the bottom restaurant, even if your food is great, the bottom restaurant, they boot them. And they'll do another restaurant, typically from a different region. So there's always a cycle of restaurants coming in and out of that museum. So you're always going to find a different flavor. You're going to find, and I think a year pass for the Ramen Museum was like $5. And I was like, why is it so cheap? She goes, because there's so many people here that come for lunch. So they'll just get $5, you know, they'll have a guest pass, you know, kind of thing, or, you know, and then they'll just go in there and they'll go downstairs and they'll have lunch. She goes, you got 8 restaurants downstairs. You can't go wrong. So, and then if you want to go visit the museum for museum purposes, you bought yourself a year pass. I was like, heck,
Sure.
I'd buy it.
Yeah, I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
RoboCop reference there, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you totally. You know, until you have been abroad, especially places like in Japan, and you go to those hole in the wall locations where you don't think you're like, I don't know, this place looks pretty shady, but then you go inside and you see how nice it is, and the food is outstanding. It gave me like a different perspective on things, even here in America, where sometimes a shady place really is shady, but I usually give it more of a chance now than I would have if I hadn't been to Japan and experienced what a hole in the wall place really looks like and what it has, what kind of potential it has, and that without just automatically writing it off, saying, "Oh, this place is going to suck," because it's literally like the elbow, like the armpit of this, housing complex or business complex or whatever. Because sometimes in Japan, you don't even know it's a restaurant or a business because it is woven into the fabric of the city or the country or the neighborhood. You don't even know it's there. You have to kind of really pay attention. Because I remember one time there was it was only open in the evenings. It was kind of like a dinner joint in Japan. It kind of like a catch-all. It had like everything. It had rice dishes, noodle dishes, curry dishes, all kinds of like pork cutlet dishes, all this kind of stuff. I mean, all the main like Japanese staples, right? And I'd go there, and it was like I would pick something off the menu, something different every time, and every time it was amazing. Like it was like not even joking, and it was literally 5 minutes from my house walking, maybe. And I became good friends with the people who owned it. Like it was a husband and wife, and they were like, "Oh, Jason's here." We watched the SoftBank Hawks play baseball on the TV, and I was like a part of the community, and everybody was so excited when I came in. Like all the locals that came in and ate when they got off the trains or whatever, heading home and stuff, and it was a great experience. But like I said, when you look at it from the outside, you're just like, it just looks like some just random, just business. Because I couldn't read what it said because all in Japanese.
Yeah.
But then when I got close enough at one time and kind of like looked inside, like slid the door open and was like, oh, this is a restaurant. And then I was brave enough to go in and start talking to them and order a food and all that. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you just miss out on those kind of places if you don't take a look.
Yeah, it's for foreigners, you don't fully know it's a restaurant unless they have those windows with the plastic food outside.
Yeah.
So those are the dead giveaways. But yeah, like you said, I mean, especially depending on how old the area is that you're at. Sometimes you go down to Main Street and you'll just if you can't read the flag that's out front, you have no
right.
And you have to be able to read that little flagpole to know, oh, this is a head, because the front of the restaurant will look exactly like the front of all the houses, if there's or anything. It looks exactly on a lot of these older.
Right.
There was a name for these buildings.
Excuse me.
I forget what it is, but yeah, they'll look all the same, and the only way you can tell is you literally have to know what the flag says.
Right. And that's one of the first things I started learning. I mean, it's like a survival thing, right? I mean, you got to learn a little bit of the language and how to read and write to be able to get by. And so when I started being able to read the signs, I knew what kind of restaurant I was going to, because it'll say udon, or it'll say uramen, it'll say sushi, it'll say kari, it'll say these things, so I can read the signs, and I'm like, oh, that's what this restaurant's going to be known for, or what it's famous for. They're going to have other things there, but that's their main thing. And then it is a little bit intimidating because most of those restaurants that we're talking about do not have picture menus. They don't even have any menus. It's like they're like wood planks hanging on the walls in Japanese, and then even the price of it is in Japanese. It's like it looks like circles and dots sometimes to us, so circles and lines.
Yeah.
And you're like, and that's the amount of money you're spending. Like it'll be 800 yen or 300 yen or whatever. And so you gotta have some sense of, one, courage, and two, willing to make mistakes and like be embarrassed by sometimes of thinking you know what you're doing. And the other thing is just being somewhat adventurous too, because you're gonna maybe get a dish or a type of food that you normally might not want to eat or thought about eating, but since you picked it or you said yes, now you're like, okay, game time. It's time to put my game face on and give this a shot.
Well,
I've eaten a lot of good stuff that way though.
that's what I was gonna say. Sometimes your mistake turns into, oh, this is,
Yes.
you know, this is better than I thought, or what is this? And, you discover stuff sometimes. But yeah,
Right.
it's
I remember one time I was getting a curry. It was and they were like, oh, you have all these, because I always had curry traditionally, just regular curry with like maybe a pork cutlet, like a tonkatsu, and on rice. That's pretty much it. There wasn't like a lot of fancy stuff to it. And I went to this one, and I could put cheese on, I could put corn, I could put an egg, I could put pickles on there, like a type of a pickle, and I could put in I can't even think all this other stuff. I mean, shrimp and all these things in there, and I just was like, wow, this is crazy. You can doctor it up. You can have more rice, less rice, more sauce, and it
yeah,
was just like it was just kind of like a pizza if you think about like how you want to create a pizza. And
yeah,
it was it was kind of cool that way because I'm like, I have all these options now. And so it was neat for that reason. And then, you got to try things you would normally try. Now I put a cheese and an egg on all my curry. I'm like, that was like opened my whole new world to me.
yeah. We have curry all the time. We'll have Japanese rice, and
Yeah.
my wife took she made a chicken soup or chicken stew, and
Mm-hmm.
we didn't finish it. So instead of letting it go bad, she turned it into a curry, and
Mm-hmm.
you know sometimes it's thick and it tastes really good, and sometimes it's thin and it tastes really good, and
Yeah.
it's a smorgasbord inside it. But I
Right.
never had curry until I dated my wife, and we have it all the time. And it's just
Oh yeah.
as soon as I see her pull out those cubes, it's like, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I think that's like probably a lot of people think sushi is the Japanese dish of choice. Like the
Yeah.
gateway to Japanese food. And I think a lot of people, and I don't disagree with that to a degree, but so many people have hangups with one, seafood, and two, thinking everything's raw, which
Yeah.
that's not true at all. So I'm always like, okay, well, let's put sushi on the back burner. That could be like that's something you can level up to. Let's go and start out with curry. Curry's a more of an easier one. It's all things that you would eat normally. You would eat rice, you could eat chicken, you would eat pork, you eat
Yeah.
potatoes and carrots,
Yeah.
all this stuff. Like think of it as like a really like a thick stew because you're gonna put that on top of rice. I'm like, if you like stew, it's gonna be the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
So and then people are like, oh, okay, I can kind of see that. I'm like, yes, try that. And then like we said, you can play with it a little bit and figure out maybe different things you like on it or whatnot. So
Yeah.
for sure. So let me ask you this, kind of switching gears a bit. So you're in the world of like autographing TTM and signatures and doing actual shows and people showing up at local places in your neck of the woods.
I just
Like, what is that?
is it which side is right there, and I just got a Kevin Falk. I was at a signing for the store around the corner. Does these prints like this? I know you can't see it very well for the light, but yeah, I mean, I was at a signing 2 nights ago.
So is Boston back open to people where you can start doing these autograph signings
Yeah,
again and
yeah.
people coming out, like people aren't as nervous and scared as they were like 8 months ago?
No, see when that whole thing started, Boston and Massachusetts, we were hit pretty hard. We were
Right.
ranked as one of the top states as like in form of like infected and things like that.
Sure.
And some of that had to do with New York was a major hub, and so when you're flying international, if there's no direct flight, sometimes you'll go out of New York. So people from New York flying in with the Italian variant and going home to Boston and flying. So we got hit pretty well, but our governor played no games, and he shut things down fairly quickly, masked up fairly quickly, and as much as it irritated people, we went from one of the most infected states to one of the lowest infected states in a really quick time. So they were pretty staunch on getting a hold of this whole thing. And a few months ago, things started to open up again. We a monthly show that happens used to happen in Southern Mass, but now it's moved. They had their first show, and the guy said you couldn't move. You couldn't move in the aisles of all the vendors because so many people. They've just been banging to get out. So yeah, we've had some shows
Right.
and some live music at bars and things like that. And so yeah, there was a signing at one of that store yesterday. There's been a few other, but right now it's private signings are still the rage because players don't want to get too busy on doing it. But there's a big Comic-Con happening next weekend, Terrificon down at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. There's been a couple smaller ones that opened up earlier. So yeah, it's Fan Expo is on, and there's another signing show, one of the bigger ones that's happening. I can't remember. I think it's end of August or beginning of September. So it's moving, it's happening. But so how is it out in your neck of the woods? Is it people starting to creep out to do their little shows or anything like that? Or
Yeah. Well, the thing is Indiana obviously is not Massachusetts, and so they're going to be a lot more. We only in Indiana, to be honest with you, like this was way back last year. I would say like March till about May, maybe June of last year, they were like pretty serious about trying to restrict as much like gatherings as possible. But even then, it was kind of business as usual, except everybody had to wear a mask. You didn't have to, but it was strongly encouraged, and there'd be a lot of places that wouldn't let you in and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of shows, to kind of go back to what you were saying, were closed because, we're talking about local independent shows. They don't want to take any chances of getting people sick or having it come back on them saying, I was at your show and I got sick because you didn't do the proper, PPE or blah, 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 whatever, So there was a lot of that early on. But I would say by the early fall through winter time, it was kind of like still mask wearing, but gatherings were back in full swing. And then we had a little uptick in Christmas time because of Christmas.
Yeah.
So kind of shows kind of went back down to being like not happening for like a month or two. But then by about February again, it was back as business, and it hasn't been back since. And then I think I want to say March or April of this year, they were like no more mask mandates and all that stuff. So it's been pretty much like business as usual ever since. So the shows for us, to get back to what you were saying initially, I just want to kind of do a trajectory a little bit to give you a little, a little bit of foreknowledge or back knowledge of what we're talking about. So I was telling this to somebody else off, not live, but I'll tell everybody this because I think it's kind of funny because, I haven't been to a card show ever since I stopped really getting back into card collecting for like 4 or 5 months. I haven't been at all. But my dad asked me last month, he was like, hey, I would like to come and meet you up in Indianapolis and go to a card show. And I told my dad, I go, I'll meet you, but I'm not going to spend any money at a card show. And I might have no interest in any cards. And I think he thought I was joking. So he was like, oh, okay. So I meet him at this card show. And I'm telling you what, dude, it was jam packed on a Sunday in the morning where a lot of people are going to be at church or sleeping in from Saturday night partying or whatever. And we're talking about like, elbow to elbow with like 50 or 60 tables in there. And and then I had heard that the other few shows in Indianapolis also have been that way. And back in March, like I was telling you before, I kind of like, hashtag walked away or whatever. I went to a card show in March when they finally, like I told you, they kind of let things go back to normal, and it was jam packed with people. So nothing's really changed in Indiana. It is like wall to wall people. Now we're not doing signings, so obviously that's like an older crowd, like an older celebrity or older ball player might be highly unlikely to want to be mixing in with the public because they're so much older. They don't want to be sitting around touching a bunch of people's stuff or touching them. But as far as just people showing up at shows, it's like it might as well be like 2019. It's no one cares.
Yeah, there's a place, actually the place I used to work at. They're having 3 players in this weekend, 3 Patriots in this weekend, and a lot of it has to do with their rescheduling some of these past signings, and now you're trying to fit them all in, and so there's a lot going on because you can't, especially with certain sports, you can't put these signings too deep into the year because you're going to run into player schedules and things like that. But yeah,
Sure.
it's been pretty active when it comes to
So
getting stuff done.
So do you see? I know, like I always feel like Boston has a very, from the outside looking in, right? From
Yep.
Massachusetts, people who live in Massachusetts, people live in Boston and around Boston. People seem to be very proud to be Bostonians. They're
Oh
very
yeah.
proud to be Boston residents. They're very proud of their state. They're very proud of their teams and all that stuff. So with the way things have been with sports, like kind of being like starting, stopping, and kind of getting going and falling back, and new rules and changing things. How's Boston as a sports town been? Are you feel like people are taking it at stride and they're good with it? They feel like
Oh yeah.
people are changing rules and regulations and the way the game's being played, not just baseball but basketball, football, whatever, and like they're making it things worse. I mean, how's the vibe you've been feeling in Boston about like sports in general?
People are just happy to go back to the games. Um,
Sure, yeah,
I think, to be honest with you, we had a little bit of an unfair advantage because Celtics went to the playoffs, Bruins went to the playoffs, Red Sox right now are the first team to hit 60 wins. The Patriots weren't doing so hot, but there was still excitement about the team and just getting back.
sure,
So we had a little bit of a difference that way that might have gathered a little bit more excitement. But this is one of the only 4-sport towns in the country,
that
and
is true.
we've been like that
True.
for quite a long time. So there's always a desire for the sports, and I think the only rule change that people got a little gruff with was in baseball, where they wanted to quicken the game when it came to ties, putting the runner on second, and
Right.
that took a little bit getting used to. And there's still a little bit of a split, but when it comes to going to the games and just enjoying the sports, I went to a Sox game about a month ago, and it looked like 2019. It was
Right.
right at the beginning of May, and you'd think nothing ever happened. It was
Right.
it was live.
Well,
We
yeah,
some of my daughter. It was a school thing actually, and my daughter, but the people that was sitting with us, that was their first Sox game, and
mm.
and I was like, you got to see a win, you got to see a fight, you got to see you get to see everything,
Right.
everything but Busty Morgan run out in the field and try to give somebody a kick. So, I mean,
Busty Morgan.
they
That's an old school reference.
they did the wave, they did, sweet
Right.
line, they, all of this stuff. And they even got on the big screen, in between innings, all the kids all the sports do it. Kids are dancing,
Sure.
cameras are around, and they ended up getting on the big screen, um, which was cool, but it was like,
Right.
you saw everything you dreamed to see at a game
Right.
right there. It was,
Right. That's
old
cool.
school, it was new school, and it was fun. But yeah,
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really, really cool. I mean, I'm glad to hear that. Not just for your daughters, but for everybody to kind of have. I think that's what people's been missing. For so
yeah,
long is, having that just like somewhat normalcy to get back to a game and just to enjoy singing along to the music and participating in the watching the game and interacting with the crowd and the team and all that jazz. I think it's like, really great experience to be able to do that. So it's good to see that. It's good that places like Boston and other places like you said that had a lot more of a difficult go of it early on. To kind of be able to not have to be um, still in that same mindset, but to be kind of free from that and feel like let's just have a nice enjoying weekend or an
yeah.
evening with family at a sporting event. That's absolutely stellar. So that's great.
So
So go
actually, when,
ahead.
when you were talking about cards and card shows, and anybody that's followed you knows you had your issues with baseball and came back and fell out again and things like that, and especially you're not shooting from the kitchen, so people can't tell that, unless you go on the back videos, the difference between the photos you had behind you at the table, 6 months ago versus the photos you have behind you now.
Mhm.
Have you started going with any other sports? I know you were really hardcore baseball, but
Mhm.
even going to a card show, you're like, I'll check out some football cards, or let me look at this hockey stuff, or you know,
Sure.
I don't know if anybody knows how much you're into the other three major sports, or did
Right.
you start doing a cricket club? Are you now into
Right.
you know
Yeah. I'm doing the old cricket and some Irish traditional Irish sports from my homeland. But
okay,
no,
okay,
I mean, like, honestly, yeah. I mean, for me, it's been very, you know, it's been very difficult because, I've always been a very uh, what do you call, like, a occasional or just like a superficial fan of like football and basketball,
hmm
hockey, even, whatever. Like, I would just be kind of like, just watching it because it's on TV or because somebody else is watching it. So I just kind of go along with it. I never really had much investment in sports. Baseball has
okay.
always been the number one thing.
Yep.
In Indiana, and I'm sure this is probably not a surprise to people who are from Indiana, but a lot of times you're an IU basketball fan, a Notre Dame football fan, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how it is. Then you got people who like Purdue, of course, also, but that's kind of growing up in an Irish Catholic family like me. It was Notre Dame football and IU basketball. So I did kind of follow them somewhat religiously, even as an adult, kind of keep up with them. But like pro sports in Indiana, the Pacers and the Colts. I wasn't more of a Steelers fan growing up because my dad was a Steelers fan, shockingly. So I kind of was always like, go Steelers. And then with basketball, I was a Celtics fan because of Larry Bird,
Choice.
because Larry Bird's just from, not too far from where I'm from. And then
Yeah.
I went to college, like literally just like maybe an hour from where he grew up. So, Larry Bird was like, and then let's be honest, being a white kid in Indiana in the '80s, and Larry Bird, like that's what dreams are made of. So, that was a big thing. So, so I followed Boston Celtics shockingly a lot in the '80s and all that. But baseball's always been the main sport,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get too negative, Nancy. But with the reason why I took a break, I hashtag walked away is because I feel like I can't enjoy the game like we were talking about. That childlike enjoyment your daughters were having at the game. I feel like it's been taken away from me, quite
Yeah.
frankly, and so I can't enjoy it like I used to. And if I wasn't looking for it, probably it'd be easier just to avoid it. But my little antennas are always like super like sensitive, and I'm always picking up on all these like little things that they're trying to do to manipulate, the fans and try to push certain things on us. And I just decided to take a break. So to kind of circle back to what you were saying, the thing that I kind of found myself falling into was a lot of, I don't want to get into this with you necessarily because you might not could care less, but I was more going into collecting wrestling cards like WWE,
I actually,
AEW, stuff like that.
if I could open the box right now, I think the ones that I had were from 87, 86,
Mm,
something like that. And I had almost the complete set, with the Ravishing Rick Rude, lipstick kiss card and all these other.
sure.
And I sat there and I'm staring at them, and it's like, yeah, I think it's those. I think it's
Right.
that set. And so if I could tell which box it was in, I'd open it up and I'd pull it out because I was gonna send him, being like, I can't send him any baseball cards. Who is that?
Right.
Who is that?
That was Andre the Giant back in the
Okay.
day.
Yep.
So
Watch him
here's
wrestle
Chief
at the
Jay
box.
Strongbow. You won't be seeing that nowadays.
No.
That would not be HR appropriate. So, but anyways, so I kind of been getting more into that. I just actually just bought a whole lot of wrestling DVDs off of eBay just today, actually.
Your videos where you were reviewing some of the ones that you were finding, and it's like, I'm not seeing any other sports, because every time I see Bleacher Report throw on a Reds pitcher is in seventh inning of a no hitter, it's like, I'm going to text Jason and he's going to say, I don't care.
Right.
Walked away.
Right.
So,
Well, it's so funny because my dad's like, "Oh, Jason, such and such is on TV today. You want to watch it? Gonna watch it?" And I'm like, "Dad, I don't watch baseball." And he was like, "Well, we want to go to a game together." And I told my dad, I'm like, "If you want to go to a game, father and son, yes, I will go to a game with you because it's spending time with my dad." You know what I'm saying? Like I've said this before. Like Luca wanted to go to a AAA game in Indianapolis, so we went to the Indianapolis Indians game.
Yep.
So me and him and his mom, we all went. And I mean, it's become spending time with my son. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I wanted to go just on my own with my buddies. Like, I'm doing this with my son. So this is an experience and memories I'm creating with him.
It's not for you, it's for him. So
right. Did I buy a bunch of stuff there? Absolutely not. I bought my ticket to get in. I sat down and watched the game. It was a heck of a game. It was fun. It was the Iowa Cubs versus the Indianapolis Indians. And so I got to see like K. Brian Hayes and D. Gordon Strange or D. Strange Gordon and Kevin Kmeyer from the Pirates and a handful of guys I know that had pretty big name recognition at some point in time. Yep. So I got to see quite a few of those guys. And that was cool. I mean, of course, it was a heck of a game. It was bombs being hit. I mean, I was like, this is fun. And, it's Indianapolis, so there's a lot of the politics are kept out of the stadium. Like they just want to play baseball, So we didn't get too much into that, which is great. But it was fun. I had a great time, and it was making me like I kind of was like, man, this is what I miss about baseball. Just going there, getting a hot dog and a beer, watching the game with my son or his mom, and just enjoying it. It was an awesome experience. And I'm like, I wanted to go back to this, and maybe we will get to go back to it. Hopefully, at least to my liking. But I'm not holding my breath. Let's say. Yeah. So Chris asked, I don't know if you saw this or not, but Chris said he thinks Chris Graff's 101. I don't know if you know Chris Graff's 101, but he said we need more celebrity signings. Now I know you do mostly with sports signings, but do you see that like the TTMing? Do you see more like independent or like online signings being done? Like that's just going to be like the new approach that everybody's doing for the foreseeable future? Do you think we're ever going to go back to big conventions filled with people signing or what?
Well, yeah, because you see stuff like GalaxyCon and Fan Expo has still got their shows running, and what's going on, and Chris might be in the loop with some of this too, is you're seeing a lot of these places, and I think this started with COVID too, but now it's turning into virtual signings. You can't make the show, but you want it to. I think I saw one for Bitsy Tulloch, who's on the current. She plays Lois Lane in the newest CW Superman show. She was on Grimm, and she's done a handful of things. And it was X dollars, and you get she'll sign a photo on camera and for you, and you get to do a Q&A with her kind of thing. So I think you're seeing it, but not as much in person. Or they're trying to make extra cash and they're doing the virtual. Shatner did a virtual thing a couple of years ago with quarantine. It was like $250 to just, chat with them for 10 minutes, and it was, some of the prices are just so stupid. But yeah, exactly. I got to go sell platelets so I can get my.
Yeah, exactly. I might.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Doc. Take it. Like that. All right.
And so, I mean, you're seeing them, but they're not. I mean, I wish celebrities would do more appearances, but you don't really see that very much. And that you haven't really seen anything like that. I don't think there's even been any big city stuff.
Well, I will tell you, Chris. I'm not for sure if I've ever asked you where you're from, and if you're still in here. I mean, we got a handful of people watching, but I don't know what state you live in, Chris. But I will tell you, in Indiana, well, two things. One, to kind of to talk about what we mentioned a moment ago. There's an online. I think they're an actual store, but they're doing, like you said, virtual signings for wrestlers out of New Jersey or New York called K&W Wrestling. Okay. And they're getting like all the big names that are like current, as well as legends and superstars from yesteryear, come into their store a few times a week. They fly them in or whatever. And like you said, they'll do a virtual signing. Like you can watch them, even if you're not paying to get an autograph, you can watch them talk to like, the people, the handlers, talking to the fans as they sign people's autograph. And of course it's anything from $5 or $10 to like 40 or 50, depending on who the person is. Right. So they're doing that on a regular basis. I mean, like I'm on their Facebook page, and it's like they're updating, celebrities like a couple times a week. So there's that. But then the other thing is for Indiana, we had just had a show called Days of the Dead. That's a big horror convention. There's also one called Horror Hound, and they're both in Indiana. Hey, what's up, Golf? And they just had one last week, a show of Days of the Dead. And generally speaking, that show usually has like about, I'm not even kidding, it feels like between 20 or 30 guests minimum there. Of all kinds of, mostly horror, but it'd be sci-fi, it could be musicians, or sometimes wrestlers. Sometimes it's crossover people that are like still relevant to like people who were only in like one movie from like 1985. It's a little bit of everything, right? So they had like this last week, they had Richard Dreyfuss there, which is like a huge get.
He didn't.
Richard Dreyfuss.
He's infamous for canceling his appearance.
I know. I didn't go because I thought he would cancel at the last minute. I didn't want to spend $25 to get in, and they're like, Mr. Dreyfuss canceled this week due to unforeseen circumstances. Yes. Which is what he usually tells.
Right.
But then there he was, taking pictures with everybody, and he was there with the fans. Like I thought they'd have him like cornered off, and everybody's wearing a hazmat outfit because he has to be in the 70s.
Yeah.
I mean, and he was just there like mixing it up with everybody. And they had like Louis Gossett Jr. was there, which is another huge guy, and I was like, wow,
I just watched the show from the 70s on MeTV. I was up at my mother's camper trailer because I was helping her. She's moving out of an old one, and she just bought a new one, so she's helping her run between her house and the camper and moving around, and I was watching this show, and it was I forget the name of it, and had Louis Gossett Jr. as the co-star, and just to see him so young, but it's as soon as you brought up his like, oh, the show was totally dumb. I think it only lasted one season, but it was like to see him just so
oh yeah,
it was cool. I liked him. Him and Enemy,
it was great.
Enemy Mine, I think, was probably my favorite for him.
I liked him in the movie Iron Eagle from the 80s. I liked him in
I almost said every time I watch football and I see Ian Eagle, I was like, it's not Ian Eagle, it's no, he calls himself and it's like every time he's Ian Eagle, and every time I'm like, no, stupid, it's Ian. But every time I see him, I think of that movie and Louis Gossett Jr. I think of that.
That was like a huge thing for him. I know he did tons of stuff, but yeah. So I mean, to kind of talk a little bit about that, Chris, like in Indiana, there wasn't like normally, like I said, those shows are usually feels like, and probably reality, like close to 30 guests. Now this time around, they had probably more like half that. They didn't have as many guests. And I think, of course, they were trying to keep people safe, and you have less people there. That means there's more room to move around and peruse the aisles. So they didn't have as many people there as in the years past. But there was a huge group of celebrities that showed up for this thing, and so I think again, some states or some cities are saying, hey, you do what you want to do. You as the organizer could take on the responsibility to create that kind of environment that people feel safe in, I guess, or whatever. And if you don't want to do that, you do the virtual signings like we're talking about. But if you're wanting to be a little bit more, taking that leap of faith, I guess, and start bringing people in and having celebrities there waiting to sign, then you can do that. So, I mean, they were even having like photo ops and stuff with these guys. And again, these guys are not spring chickens.
Photo ops, and it's like, what do you mean a virtual photo op? Are you going to sit there and take your phone and sit next to your laptop and go, and it's and it's like, so, I get a picture of William Shatner's laptop, it's just
right.
As much as I understand those shows and these people, not the stars, but these other venues, they're trying to stay relevant and keep the money flow going and not, but I just, to me, in a way, I hope these virtual signings don't last very long, because after a while, because you're still getting charged pretty much the same price as you would at the show. So, I just don't know where the market's going to go, but I really hope it slows down to the point that it's like, I'm not going to pay $50 for him on a computer. Get him to the show, and then the money that some of these people are making, they're going to have to make the decision. Do I want $5,000 and, deal with the show, or do I not want the 5,000 because nobody's showing up for the virtuals anymore?
Right.
I understand the virtuals, but I part of me just really doesn't like it because of where it could take these shows to become
Well,
not.
and for me, and I know you probably feel the same way, is that, if I'm paying like well under the $20, I don't really care about the experience as much because I didn't
Yeah.
spend that much money on it. But if once I get that $20 range or more, I want to have an interaction with that individual. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, even if it's just a 45-second shake your hand, whatever, like thanks for coming out. I can say, hey, I thought you were great in such and such movie, or I love that you play for the Reds, or whatever the situation lends itself to. Like, if I'm paying at least $20 or more, like I want more of an interaction than an attaboy and out the door you go or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, for sure, if it's like if I'm paying $5 for some like indie jobber guy that popped up on AEW for 2 times, yeah, I'll pay $5. I don't care. I don't need to meet that guy right now, right?
Yeah.
But if I'm paying 20, 25, 30, $40 for like Bruce Campbell from Evil Dead, I definitely want to meet the guy. I don't want to pay $50 just for him to write his name, which is an actual Z, which makes no sense.
I've seen that.
Right. But then that's my experience is that he signed a Z on an 8x10, and I don't even at least get to say, hey, Bruce, it was great to meet you, and for him to blow me off anyways. But still, for me to have that experience.
Yeah. I heard
so
50 things on him. He can be kind of moody. Sometimes he'll be chatty, but more often than not, he's just he kind of comes.
He's there for the business aspect. He's there for a business transaction.
Yeah, he's not there hands and kiss your baby. He's there to.
Yeah, he's not there shaking babies and kissing hands, as I like to say.
Oh, they'll just
right.
And just do the look down and stuff, and that's what kills me about some of the prices that they're charging these days. Where it's like, if you're going to pay $100, I want you to look at me in the face.
Right, and like that was something you can appreciate this as being a guy who's a TTMer, a convention goer, a guy who handles these people at some point in time or knows the inner workings of the behind the scenes. Years ago, probably like 2007, maybe 6, Chris Jericho had just got let go from WWE, or he quit or whatever that in one of his like downtimes, and he showed up at Horror Hound Weekend in Indiana. And I was super pumped to meet him because I've been a huge wrestling fan my entire life, and I was a big fan of his in WCW before he came over to WWF then. And so I was super pumped to meet the guy. And the whole time, he, like you said, he wouldn't look up. He was on his phone. He wouldn't even talk to people. He was just talking on his phone, and he'd be like, yeah, what's up, dude? What's Bob? Okay. All right, man, thanks. And then, like, he wouldn't even look at the person. He's like, it is on his phone. Like, he was just too important to be, bothered by actually being attentive to the fans.
Yeah.
And I remember being, like, so put off by that. Now, that might have been a one-time thing, and I hate to, like, paint somebody forever with that same brushstroke. But I'm sure you've run into celebrities that have that kind of, again, you've seen it with your own eyes. They're very dismissive. They're not interested. It's a complete business transaction. They would rather be anywhere else but there, but they're going to get $5,000 for like 2 days of work. So they're like, okay, I'll show up. Have you had any experiences with people like that where, it's just been like really painful to watch them interact with the public?
Well, I'd probably say the worst interaction I had, because like I've mentioned before, I like to go on Sundays.
Right.
Sunday's dead, typically, depending on the show. Sunday's really down, and so you tend to get, especially if there's no crowd, you tend to have a lot more time with the people, and they're if they're going to sit there for the whole day and you walk up and chat, they'll chat.
Right.
So, but I think the most painful one I had, and it kind of hit me raw.
I kind of remember you maybe telling me this now, but go ahead.
It's about Sully from Godsmack.
No, maybe. Okay, no, okay.
I don't know if I mentioned. Yeah, so I had one of the earliest releases of their first CD, and they used to play at a bar down the street from my house. So I saw them, before the songs hit a number of times, and
sure.
and actually the guitarist's girlfriend was my father's secretary. So
Oh wow.
so it was so I went. He actually lives the next town over, really tiny town, the next town over from where I lived for about 20 years, from my mother's house. So I went to this show, and he was in this brutal movie with Tony Todd and a few other actors. It was just this nothing indie production. And so I walked up to the table, was going to pay my $25 to get signed, and I had one of the original CDs, and I put it up there, and he opens it up, and he goes, "All right," he goes, "I'm going to see how much of a fan you are." I was like, "All right, whatever." So he opens the CD and he looks at the liner notes, and he can tell. He goes, "All right, this is like the second release." He goes, "This is a really early release." And I sat there and I joked with him, and that we used to drink at the same bar, because Sully would go to that bar all the time. They didn't just perform there. That's where he hung out and drank. And, I said, I just didn't really bother you or anything like that. But when I started bringing up the bar and that I was from that town and whatever, all of a sudden he's like, "Yeah, so what? Yeah, okay." And all of a sudden he got really put off. And it's like, 5 minutes ago, you were my best friend.
Right.
When I paid the $25, but now all of a sudden that, I'm trying to make small talk with you, all of a sudden it's like, what are you doing talking to me? And it's like, it really, it put me off to the point that it's like, I'm, an hour or so from where we grew up, and I'm just trying to say hi. Like, I've known you forever.
Sure.
And, and it was just so put off to have someone like him just all of a sudden be dismissive and be such a jerk. And it was like, it upset me, the stuff that he said to me and how dismissive he was. I spent from January 1st, 2000, I was at a Godsmack concert. I spent New Year's Eve paying through the nose for watching them for New Year's. I was invested in the band, and then it was, sure. I don't say he was my hero, but he kind of qualified for the warning, never meet your heroes, because all, he treated me like a pile, he treated me like I was, dismissed. And it's like, I'm sorry, my boobs aren't big enough for you or something. So I think within the first week and a half, I took that CD, that was signed by Sully, took the ticket, took the stickers and all the t-shirt that I got for the Godsmack 2000. I sold it on eBay.
Yeah.
I couldn't get rid of it fast enough. And it felt brutal to sit there and be like, I just wanted 2 minutes of small talk with the guy. There was no one else in line.
Right.
What the hell else are you talking? He was too busy talking to one of his co-stars. And I just wanted to sit there and have 2 seconds of small talk. And I can count on 2 hands and, 2 hands and 2 feet of everybody in my place that I've gone to a show on Sunday and had small talk with all of these stars,
right.
Or Dirk Benedict or Peter Shinkota or Steve Blum, or, they're not massive names. I mean, these are smaller shows, but you're still able to sit down and just have, chat time, chatting around with like George Romero and Taylor Maine and some of these just shooting the breeze. And they're all, when there's nobody there, unless they leave early, they got nothing else to do.
Right.
Shoot the shit with them. Why not?
Yeah. Your conversation, or what you explained, I had a similar experience with a lot of people, but one in particular that came into mind was Chris Sarandon. And people know him as Prince Humperdinck from The Princess Bride. Yeah. But he also was on Fright Night, which I love. He was awesome in Fright Night. He was Jerry Dandridge. He was also in Child's Play. He played the police officer in Child's Play.
I don't think the word means what you think it does.
Right, exactly, right. And and he's from, his family is Greek. From his mom and dad are, I believe, from Greece. They end up living in West Virginia. probably the most un-Greek place in America. They ended up in West Virginia. And I did, and like, I'm sure like you, as you are a TTMer, and like we've talked about this before, is like you try to like learn as much as you can about the subject before you write a letter to them or before you meet them. Because I, at least for me, I want to talk about something that maybe they don't hear 5 million times a year or whatever. Yep. And so I researched and I realized he's from West Virginia, and I'm sure that conversation doesn't get brought up that often. He was, you know, he went to school in West Virginia, went to school in Morgantown, like West WVU, I believe, or whatever. And so I went up to him, like had all these like little like, you know, in my Rolodex of mind of like little like conversation points. Like you said, no one was there. He had some chick that was like his handler for the weekend or whatever. So I'm going up to him. I'm like, hey, Mr. Sarandon, how you doing? And he just kind of like, hey. So I'm like, uh-oh, here we go. Yeah. And I had a Fright Night poster, original from 1985. And I want him to sign it. I already had like a handful of other people sign it for me. So I was super pumped about getting his autograph on it. But he just kind of starts like, you know, signing it. And I'm like, so I was going to ask you, what was it like growing up in West Virginia? Your parents owned a Greek restaurant in West Virginia, blah, blah, blah. And he didn't even answer me. It's like I didn't even existed. He just spent the entire time talking to the chick and not even acknowledging my presence after the initial like, hey, how you doing? Give me your $20 or whatever kind of thing. Yeah. Jake, and I was like, man, what a douchebag, you know? Yeah. I mean, and like you said, if it wasn't for it being like a unique item that I got signed, I would have done the exact same thing that you did. You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
so yeah, I definitely, like you said, when you have those experiences, you just kind of like leaves a bad taste in your mouth, and you're just like, all right, man, like
because you can't look at what you just had signed the same way. I mean,
right.
I didn't when Godsmack first released their CD, it didn't even have their biggest single on it. It was their biggest single was a side release, and so I had heard that the single was going to get released and it was going to be attached to new copies of the CD. So even when I gave him the CD and he's like, yeah, I want to see how big of a fan you are, and I pointed to the 2 tape marks that were on the cover, and you know, even the co-star that he was sitting with chuckled. He goes, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, I can look in the liner notes and tell you how old this CD is, like when the release was, because the liner notes were changed with every new pressing. And I looked at his co-star. I told his co-star, I said, see these 2 tape marks right here? I said, the CD single of whatever. That isn't even on the first release of the CD. I said, but I waited for it because the song was, you know, I loved it. And
sure.
I said, so when you see these, I said, it's pretty much like the second go around, like the second pressing. And, but it was like, I couldn't look at that CD the same. I don't think I purposely have avoided listening to a Godsmack song. They're playing at a show pretty close to where I live, and I won't go see it. I don't care.
Sure.
You know, I have no idea. And my father brings up, you know, every once in a while, he's like, so, you know, do you still listen to the band? And I told him about the experience, and I was like, no, I have nothing to do with it. Because when they signed their big record deal, when they signed their big contract, Tony Rambola, one of the other band members, called his girlfriend, who was my father's secretary, and said, quit your job, you don't have to work again. He goes, we just signed a big enough deal, you're not going to have anything to worry about, which was cool, you know, but it was, you know, before I could even relay that story to Sully, he already shut me down and turned me off. So it's just like, you know, I get better things to spend my money on, and it's not you.
Sure.
You know, and Jake Busey at a show was like that. I walked by and I was like, oh, hey, Mr. Busey, how you doing? You know, walking towards the table, and he's like, are you going to buy a photo, or are you just going to talk?
Wow.
I'm out of here, brother.
Yeah. You're like, apparently I'm just going to be talking. See ya.
Well, apparently I'm going to be talking to somebody else because.
Right. I was going to spend my money here, but now I'm spending that money down the way here, and I want to spend it at that table. Right.
Photos of that guy. So I would have mentioned him, but I don't really consider him a conversation.
Right. Right.
You know, because I literally, if I reached my hand out, I could not have touched the table. So I never even made it. You know,
right? You're like, oh, so close, and no. Like
yeah,
that.
And,
Right.
you get 2 photos, or I'm going out for lunch after the show because screw you.
Yeah.
But, there's so many good conversations, with, I had my youngest daughter a few years back and went to the show on Sunday and bouncing around and getting had a really, fun chat, long chat actually with, because there was nobody there, with Peter Shinkota. He played the ninja villain in the Daredevil series on Netflix. He's done a good handful of other things, and he just wanted to chat because he wasn't going to leave, but there was nobody there.
Sure.
So, but you end up having, and I talk to him, online every once in a while. And cool fact is, his aunt, he's technically Canadian, but he's, Japanese by heritage. His aunt started Kumon, all the Kumon schools. She brought it to Canada and brought it over from there. And every so often, whenever I pass one, like there's one about a quarter mile, about a 10-minute walk from my apartment. And I used to take photos of it, joking. It's like, hey, Peter, thought of you today, kind of thing. And,
right. That's awesome.
he'd get a good kick out of that. And, just reminding him of Kumon, I think, he know, if I walked up to him, he'd probably know who I'd mention Kumon and he would remember me exactly.
Sure.
But, you just get cool interactions with people like that, so it's, sometimes it works and sometimes it don't, but the ones that really bite.
You definitely can tell the people who are happy to be there. Obviously, they're there to do it. They're there for money. They're there for a job. I mean, that's obvious. But you can definitely tell the ones that want to have the fan interaction and enjoy the fans and know that they wouldn't be who they are without the fans.
Yeah.
And then you have the people who just, like I said, they're just there to pick up the paycheck. They don't even care. They don't care. They don't care if they don't care how you feel about it. They don't care what their image is. They don't care what their perception is. All they care about is like what Jake Busey was. Are you spending any money here or not? No? Well, I'll just keep on walking. I'd rather you just keep on. I don't even want you to waste my time. And for me, and I'm sure you may do this too, and I know anybody who does autograph collecting, especially in person, is like, I kind of fill these people out. Like, like if I go up to their table and they're chatting with me, like they show interest, they're engaged in the conversation, then I'm almost 100% likely to spend money at their table to get an autograph.
Yeah.
And it might even be somebody I might not even went there to get. I'm like, I don't have any interest in this person, but they're so cool and they're so down to earth and they're so kind that that money I would have spent for somebody else that was acting like a tool. I'm going to spend that on you now.
That's where the Jake Busey money goes.
It's
like, I didn't come for, the third, the guy at the end of the line in the ship, Starship Troopers, but I'm going to get him.
Right.
He was the guy that basically you had to, blow the thing up and actually like dial it in to see him holding a gun. But I'm going to get him because you're a jackass.
Right. But the fourth guardsman in like Star Wars or whatever, like whatever, and it's like the way off to the side, and he's had a helmet on. It could be anybody.
Yeah.
Like that guy.
He played a cadaver on NCIS, and I'm gonna get
right. Before. Or like the dog or the Walking Dead people. It's like they had one scene where they're like crawling through a graveyard, and they're like $25, and it's like they had one scene, and it's just like, I'm not giving you $25, but you're so nice and you're just happy to be there. I'm more likely to hook you up than the guy that's treating me like a douchebag over here, So,
well, I mean, you can run into stars that are just like that. So, like me and a friend of mine went to a show, and we had, I think it was Taylor Maine. Was it Taylor Maine? One of the guys that played Jason. And actually, it might have been wasn't Kane Hodder. I can't remember exactly which one it was. I'd have to pull the machete out. But we had 3 machetes hidden in a postage box because we didn't know, because they were unsheathed. We didn't know if they were going to be like, you're bringing a weapon, and these things were sharp. These things weren't, dull.
Sure.
So we kind of hid them in a postage package. And we had them all set up. So all we had to do is flip it open. He could sign everything. Well, he was showing up late. And we were standing at the table, as soon as we saw him come in, we went straight to his table. We figured we'd ask him before he set anything up. That way there wouldn't be an uneven stack of stuff on the table. And
Sure.
he looked at us and he's like, yeah, guys, can you give me a minute to set up? And he pulls out this giant thing of photos. And me and my friend just looked at it and said, okay, we'll help you. He's like, what? He goes, we'll help you. These photos, where do you want these photos? And we ended up helping him set up his table, straightening the photos out, making sure, and, separating the stack and putting all this stuff over here. And he's like, unfortunately, I still got to charge you full price, but I really appreciate you guys. I've never had people do that for me. It's like, we're more than happy to, do whatever. So, we helped him set up his whole table, and he just, was more than happy to chat because he was friendly, we were friendly, and kicked it off. I mean, if he was a total dink, we would have turned around and been like, I would have said, yeah, let me separate all these photos. Oh, 52 pickups. So sorry.
Right, exactly.
Set of cards and then put them down and be like, you figure it out. Here's your money, son.
Right.
There
was a couple of times when there's a specific show outside in Cleveland called Cinema Wasteland, and it's a big film convention that's also autograph show, and it's a lot more like niche type thing. It's like grindhouse movies and like B movies from like the 80s, 70s, and 80s, maybe even in the early 90s, but really it's 70s and 80s cinema for the most part. But you have a lot of the Jasons, a lot of the Michael Myers and all that stuff. And there was a few times, which is funny you say that, with like some of these, like, most of these guys are pretty big dudes that played Michael Myers and Jason and all these like creature people, whatever. And there was a few times, over the course of all these years of going to these shows where like I'm in the same elevator with this like 6'5" guy who played Michael Myers in like 1992 or whatever. And he's just like looking at me, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, Mr. Johnson or whatever?" Yeah. And he's like, "Hey, what's up, buddy? How you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, good." He's like, "You having a good time?" I'm like, "Yes." But I'm like stuck inside the, the elevator with this guy, And then it's so funny, like you like have like the Devil's Rejects guys, like Bill Moseley and Sid Haig, and I'm in the elevator with those guys heading up to our rooms, and these guys are like in the movies as like these crazy killers, like psychotic killers, and they're just like cutting up with me like we're just like best buds for like that 45 seconds you're in there together, and it's really it's kind of like an out of body experience, kind of with these guys, because they're just like normal people. They're like everybody else. They put their pants on the same way we do, but it's cool that they're like that. Where there's a lot of times you can have douchebags that just like don't bother me. Like I just want to be left alone.
Yeah, you run into both of those, but they just want to be treated like normal people. And if you treat them like normal people, like treat everybody like you're stuck in an elevator with them. You're not going to sit there and hit them up for an autograph, but it's, oh, hey man, what's going on? That kind of thing. And
right.
I think I had mentioned to you before that when I was doing livery for one of the shows, and I walk in the door, I'm going to pick up. I think I was going to pick up Rocket. I forget if it was Rocket Ishmael or if I was picking up Fred Lynn. I can't remember. My buddy shows up, and I'm like, "What are you doing here? Who are you picking up?" He goes, "Nobody." And he points over. He goes, "I'm going to have breakfast with Tom Berenger, or Mr. Berenger." And he had picked him up. He had picked Berenger up from the airport, and they just hit it off so well. Tom's like, "Hey, I'm having breakfast tomorrow. I don't have my signings not until like, let's say 1 o'clock or something, whatever it was.
Right.
Do you want, come on over and we'll have breakfast." So he showed up, and he just sat there kicking the breeze with Tom Berenger on, because you treat him like a human being. You don't sit there.
Right.
They're not getting in your car sitting next to a milk crate full of, "Hey, can you sign this on the,
right.
Just basic, question stuff, and treat them like humans, man. They can be totally, because they can be totally nice people, but
Now, what about you? What about? Well, I'm sorry. What was that last part?
I was going to say, people like them get hit up all the time. Can you sign this? Can you take a selfie? And when they get like, you're not, the players that me and my friends had repped, they knew I was a Steelers fan. So they knew that I'm not going to sit there and remember that, I'm not going to do the Chris Farley where it's like, remember that time you caught the ball? That's cool. I'm not that kind of,
Right.
I was never that kind of guy. So
Sure.
I'm a Steelers fan. Half the shows I went to, even repping the guys, I didn't bring anything to sign because I don't care.
Right.
I mean, but it was, when they sit there and realize that you're not going to be climbing all over them for tickets and stuff like that, they're just kind of just willing to chat with you.
Sure.
One-on-one. So cool.
That is cool. I was going to ask you also, so are you still TTMing right now, or have you taken a break from that, or where are you at with that?
I've taken a non-voluntary break. I just haven't had the time to really rip out a bunch of letters. I have stuff that I could send out.
Sure.
Yesterday, I did get something back from Boston Bruins, Sean Corrali, but I had sent that out over a year ago. But I was just happy to get something back. But it's, I'm looking at stuff all over the place. Like this is my prepped envelope. I got cards that are ready to go. I got envelopes that are already addressed. I just haven't had the time to sit down and like you said, you want to research some of this stuff. I don't think I've sent a letter that was just, hi, thank you for playing, sign my stuff.
Right.
I'll look at a little something to just try to, relate to them somehow. And it's, I try to look for the little things, and my favorite, being a Steelers fan, my favorite autograph was from Jack Butler a couple of years before he passed away. Jack Butler was a defensive back, and he was, from what every story I read and from what you look at statistic wise, he was a monster. And I was looking up all these stats, and I was like, well, why aren't you in the Hall of Fame? And, when you left the fields, because he left due to injury, when you left the field, you were like, you led in interceptions, you led in this, or you were second. You were an all-time leader in some of these statistics, even though the league was still only 20-something years old at the time. But I was like, you should be in the Hall of Fame. So I got my stuff back signed, and he left a little note saying, it was a little note kind of saying, you showing me things I didn't even know.
Oh, that's cool.
Butler, it was just like, and then 2 years later, the next year, his family started a petition to put him into the Hall of Fame, and he was in the Hall of Fame, I think, a year or two later. So
look at you, dude.
Did I have a hand in that? I tell myself I do, but
right.
But
you're welcome, football world.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah.
But you're welcome, Jack. But I mean, just to get a little note like that, and I've had handwritten notes on the back of my letters,
or
little comments. And God, who was it? What's his face from Pirates of the Caribbean? I'm gonna kill myself. Not Johnny Depp. He played the villain with the fish face. You're gonna make me look up IMDb.
Oh my gosh.
He's a major. He did the King's Speech and all that stuff, and I can't remember his name. Jeffrey Rush.
Jeffrey Rush.
So I was looking up something that had pegged him to a movie. And I said, I was asking him all these questions about the movie and like the people that were pegged to the, and I get this. It's a Japanese chirashi of Pirates of the Caribbean, and he signed it on the bottom. And then he writes a little note on my note. Don't believe everything I'm not in that movie. Don't believe everything you read on the internet. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I mean, that's.
Oh yeah.
But my buddy got the best ever. He was, when the Blockbuster around for me was closing. They were giving away all that. They were selling their DVD movie cards, and I would buy a handful here and there of some.
Man, I got a box of them right over there.
I got a container of them in the back of my closet.
Great minds, dude. Great minds.
And so I had a handful, and I had one of the Transformers movies, and my buddy was looking up some of the FX people, and he was looking up. So he's like, hey, he wrote it to one of these CGI guys that worked on the movie, and he's like, hey, can you sign this? I kind of do some of the offbeat, people, whatever. And he gets, I show him to work the next day, and he's got this giant grin on his face. He goes, dude, you got to see what I got. And he goes, remember this? And remember who I sent it to? Yeah. He goes, he gave it to me and flipped it on the back. He goes, read this. And I read it, and on the back of the card was, stop bothering my people. They're working on stop effing bothering my people. They're working on a movie. It's called Transformers Revenge of the Fallen. Michael Bay.
Oh my gosh. What? So, no way. Seriously?
He's on eBay and he's online. He goes, you can't find a Michael Bay autograph anywhere. And Michael Bay signed on the back of the DVD card, leave my effing people alone, or something to that effect. They're working on a movie. It's called Transformers Revenge.
Was it like legitimately his autograph, or was it just somebody messing around?
From what he could find, because there was Michael Bay out there, but Michael Bay wasn't like a giantly,
sure.
signer.
I can't even think of a Michael Bay what it would even look like.
Yeah,
I've never seen it. It's really rare, I'm sure.
According to what he found, he said he's like, I think it's legit. He goes, but
oh
what
my God.
Chances? And I started running through. I was like, how many do I have? I want to send it in, and for the show, I'm going to send it into the whole crew. But
oh my gosh,
cool autograph, and I'm so mad I didn't get it. But
oh my gosh, that's awesome. I think I don't know if I think I've said this to you before. Maybe you watched it, and I'll try to just make them really brief. I've had two situations. Have I told you the Nick Castle one?
No.
Who played Michael Myers in the original Halloween. He's only in a couple of scenes. He was the main one in there, and then Tony Moran showed up later. Anyways, but he played Michael Myers through like 98% of it, right?
Yep.
But he's also a famous director and writer in Hollywood. But what most people know him for in the horror world is because he played the Shape in Halloween.
Yeah.
And so like I sent him a long letter like you were talking about, front and like half back or whatever, double space letter I handwrite. And I asked him, all these questions, and I asked him for something to send me back autograph. My key was always, whatever you want to send me is fine. Like I always thought that was a funny little quip to put at the end, because you get all kinds of wild stuff back. And that was my experience. I could go on forever about all kinds of wild stuff that I got, not just your typical 8x10 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
So I sent him that and said, hey, Mr. Castle, if you could send me back anything, that'd be great. I'm very appreciative, blah, blah, blah. So I didn't even really talk about Michael Myers. I talked about his directing. I talked about his writing and all that. So then he sends me back, my letter, and I'm like, what? Like I look at the letter, the front page, and I get this my letter. I go, did he really just open it up, stick my own letter back in there, and then just wasted an envelope, and send it back to me? Because that stuff happens. Like a lot of like jerks do stuff like that, celebrities. They'll just open up your mail, not sign it, not do anything, but just to put it back in the envelope you provide and send it back, just so they can just ruin another envelope. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because it's used. So I take a look, I flip it all on the back, and there's like this little paragraph in it that says, and he's like, I think he's right. He's writing in third person. He goes, Nick Castle does not have any 8x10 autographs or anything to send to you. He is a writer, blah, blah, blah. He is not an actor who has headshots. If you want something signed by Nick Castle, you're going to do better than this. And then he goes, signed me. And he's put me like that. So
he's smart enough to know if I sign this.
Yeah.
Because people will do that. I've seen autographs where it's like it was a rejection letter kind of thing.
Right.
Where it's like, I don't sign this stuff, signed that person. And it's like,
yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
You just signed it, dummy.
Yeah, I know. I think it's so interesting. So then I had one, and I think, again, this, if I shared this with you before, I apologize. But the Richard Griffiths, if you know who he is, he played Harry Potter's uncle in the Harry Potter movies.
Yeah.
And he's in like he played he's since passed away, but he played lots of like British movies and even American movies as like a British actor in them. Like he was in like Sleepy Hollow, which I love, the Johnny Depp Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. So anyways, he's in that, and so I wrote him again. Same thing. I always like wrote this like long letter. He was doing a play in New York, so I was like, this is an opportunity to get a British actor because I don't send via international. I just don't want to deal with the headache of trying to come up with stamps and all that stuff for international send. So he was doing a play in New York or off Broadway or something. So I sent him a letter, and I know, and I'm sure you know this too. One of the tricks with Broadway or off Broadway is these people can't ever leave their rooms because they have 2 or 3 plays a day. So they're there all day, except to use the bathroom and maybe grab a bite to eat. They're always there because they have to be ready to prepare to go out and do their play 7 days a week. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
So if you want to get a really hard to get celebrity or, you know, a foreign celebrity, you know, Broadway's a good place to go, or off Broadway plays, because a lot of times they're just there and they'll sign when normally they wouldn't sign like on a movie set or at their house or whatever, or their like, you know, studio or whatnot. So I sent to Richard Griffiths a request for autograph, and I've talked about Sleepy Hollow and everything. And then I asked him questions throughout. And then in between all my, you know, because I do double spaced letters when I write. And then like he took the time to go, this question, I don't even know where you got it from. That was dumb. I ain't going to tell you anything about so-and-so. This is something I haven't thought about in 30 years. This was like a waste of my time. And then he flips it over and signs, thanks or with love, Richard Griffiths. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. You know, even though he was like slamming me kind of, I guess, I just thought I was like, but it goes back to your point. He still signed it. He still signed the letter for me. And he signed me an 8x10. He did sign that too. He did it. So I was like, thank you, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, you kind of, you know, if he's sending you an 8x10 and he's signing the back, you got to think that maybe he was just having
a good time with me. Yeah.
I got speaking of the Blockbuster DVD cards, I got Laura Linney on
nice.
She was doing a play out in New York, and I sent it. It was one of the first times I sent to Broadway, and sent her some DVD cards and said, you know, just gave it a shot. And some people warned me, they're like, you know, you might not see these for a while because some of the stars, they're so focused on what they're doing, they can't, and sometimes they'll get in a mountain of stuff. Like, you know, Bryan Cranston quit signing through the mail because he was showing how much stuff he gets. And he's like, I just can't do this anymore. But Laura Linney was one of those people I was warned about that she might wait until the end of the production. So when the production ended in, let's say, January, I got my things signed, you know, a few weeks later after the production ended. So, you know, when you, or another example of that too is I always send some stuff to the Bruins, and I know from experience that a lot of these Bruins, even if you send it to them in September or October, you're not going to see it until June or July, because a lot of these guys, and I've gotten, you know, I got some of the bigger names like Zdeno Chara, Brad Marchand, Torrey Krug. I did get some of this stuff back in the mail, but they didn't sign anything until the season was done. So, you kind of got to be a little wary of, you know, some of these guys on Broadway plays, they might sign it, you know, in the middle of the play. Like you said, they're stuck in the hotel room, but then some of these people might wait until the end of the production. So it's a game of patience, but, you know, sometimes you can have some really cool hits if you just sit and wait. But, you know, say it 1,000 times, you know, I've always been made fun of because I research my letters the way I do, but then you get some really cool returns. Danielle Rua from NCIS Los Angeles, she was born in Boston.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Reference to, you know, hey, you know, once you're a Bostonian, you're always a Bostonian, you know, you're all blah, blah, blah. And, you know, you're always from here, that kind of thing. And she personalized my 8x10, you know, glad another Bostonian is watching me on TV, or, you know, something to that effect.
Sure.
You know, and you know, little things like that. Bitsy Tulloch I think she went to Harvard, which when I lived in Cambridge was about a 10-minute walk from my apartment.
Mm.
And I used to, I joked around. It's like, because we were about the same age, and I was like, how many times was I at this, a couple of these, popular, pubs,
Mm-hmm.
areas, how many times did I bump into you and I just didn't realize, who you, that kind of thing.
Right.
You get this really awesome note, and Christine Taylor, she played Marsha Brady. She was Ben Stiller's wife. She
Yeah.
played Brady in the Brady Bunch movies, and
Also, she's a Hey Dude. Don't
yeah,
forget.
and I couldn't I couldn't find anything like real recent. Like I had bought some stuff off eBay, and I think it was a Brady Bunch. It was like those PR packages that they used to send out with the 8x10s and the stuff like that. And I had some Brady Bunch ones, and I had her sign one. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I just don't have anything more recent. Probably because I just didn't want to spend the extra money to steal it off Google and send it to the printer. But I wrote a nice enough note. She sent me an updated headshot. She goes,
Nice.
here's one more recent for you, and thank you so much. And you do a little bit of research. Yeah, it takes a little bit longer. Yeah, it can be a pain in the butt. And, it prevents you from putting out a form letter to every, John, Dick, and Harry. But
Right.
sometimes the return from that little extra oomph can be cooler than getting a regular anything signed.
And the subject you're dealing with, the celebrity or the sports star, if they really read their mail or they go through it, they're gonna know the difference between just the guy who's just trying to get an autograph because they're just trying to get everybody's autograph under the sun.
Yep.
And they're gonna know a real fan or a real like a passionate person about them as actors or directors or
Mm-hmm.
sports stars or whatever. Because his name is eluding me at the moment. And again, this is another one that kind of goes back to what you're saying. But he played Mike in Breaking Bad. He was the heavy that was always up against Bryan Cranston, like trying to. He was also like Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
I can't think of his name. He had like a shaved head. He was like an older guy. But Beverly Hills Cop, he played the bad guy in Beverly Hills Cop who ended up.
Was he in Under the Dome too? Was he?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I know exactly. I can't think of his name either.
But to go back to what you're saying is that he actually went to college and graduated from IU with Indiana University. So I mentioned that. I go, hey, from a fellow Hoosier, it was cool to know that you went to IU. And there's a really famous pizza place called Mother Bear's Pizza right by the campus. It's been around for 40, 50 years or whatever. And I mentioned that in the letter to him, and he wrote me back on his own letterhead from his own business, like, whatever, like his studio or his like production company, like answered my questions, like wrote and like was like, it was cool to like get to go back down memory lane with you today, Jason, and having these thoughts. Here's 8x10. And I'm like, my mind was blown, he was, and he was pretty relevant guy still. He's still making stuff. He was on Better Call Saul. It wasn't like this guy disappeared into oblivion 40 years ago. This guy's still in like, award-winning shows, with all that stuff. And he took the time out of his day to do that. Let me look it up. It's like making me crazy because I want to look it up while we're talking. But
Cam Gidget, I think I pronounced his last name right. I had some DVD cards from Gossip Girl, and I even wrote him in the letter going, local blockbuster, blah, blah, blah. I don't have anything other for you. I said, and I mentioned, I'm like, Gossip Girl is obviously not written for me. So
you're like, but
it's not a show that I'm into, but this is what I got, and I'm just trying to sit there and get some stuff together. And he even wrote a note saying, it's actually refreshing to hear somebody who's not into the show, but it's still into my career kind of thing. And was it Barry Pepper wrote on his own, like when you said personal letterhead, that reminded me, Barry Pepper wrote an apology for my stuff taking too long. When he wrote
Barry Pepper, that's cool.
Yeah,
I love Barry Pepper. He's a lot to go. He was an Enemy of the State. He was great in that.
Yep. And I forget what it was that I signed him. I have so much stuff. I actually have to sit down and like look through it. He turned, he's like on his own letterhead. Because I sat there and I'm looking at the autograph and I'm like, who the hell is this? Because I figure that, if I get a quick enough turnaround, because the database that I was using, I wasn't listing exactly what I got. like what I sent.
Mm-hmm.
When I get something back, like a DVD card, and their signatures are kind of weird, what the hell did I just? Who the hell is this? And I pull the thing out afterwards, and it was Barry Pepper letterhead, and I was just like,
That's
cool.
awesome.
You know.
That's cool. It's a guy. His name's Jonathan Banks. That's
Yeah.
who it is. So yeah, I mean, I've done that. I mean, and we both know. I mean, especially get people like you, myself, you and myself, people who've been in the game long enough. Like, if you're gonna send it like a Tom Cruise, you're not getting anything back. Or if you get something back, it's gonna be it's gonna be like a secretarial because it's gonna be an auto pen, whatever. If you even get anything, but if you're content with like trying to get some of the people who are really the character actors, or the guys that are getting less of the accolades, or the guy that's been doing it for 40 years and does the bit parts nowadays, but then maybe they were more relevant, earlier in their career.
Yeah.
Those are the guys that are going to spend the time getting back with you and like trying to make maybe that experience a little bit more special. I got a bunch of cool stuff from like Dave, what's his first name? His last name's Coscarelli, who did like the Phantasm movies.
Okay. Yeah.
Dave Coscarelli, I think. I can't remember. Dante Coscarelli, that's his name.
Okay.
And like I sent him like this, like you said, like I sent like one little thing, and he sent me back like 5 autographs off of like slicks from like old VHS cover, like promotions from like back then, and signed it. He signed like Phantasm stuff. He signed like a trading card that he had from something. I mean, he sent me back a letter. I got Joe Dante did the same thing, John Carpenter. I mean, there's a lot of guys that will spend the time. John Landis. I mean, these guys have like done like major motion pictures that are like everyone knows these movies. Yeah. And like if you ask them, like if you're actually like a fan, like we're talking about, like they got all the time in the world for you. They'll take that time to do all that. And so, but sometimes having a Joe Dante autograph off of something from Gremlins isn't as sexy as a Brad Pitt trying to get on an Inglourious Basterds 8x10 that you're never going to really get. It's never going to happen. Right?
I sent out an informant piece to Matt Damon before I realized he used Spanky Taylor. And Spanky Taylor, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a service that stars will use to auto pen all your stuff. So if you get anything back in a Spanky Taylor envelope, like right what I did with my informant piece, I just ripped it in half and tossed it because I don't care for an auto pen, which is why I've never mailed to a president while they're in the White House, because anything you get back from the president in the White House, it's an auto pen. They've been auto pens for 40, 50 years now.
Right.
But yeah, sometimes it's also what you send to, like if you're going to send like an object, or if you're going to send an 8x10, even an 8x10, some of them are going to look at you as you're a collector. I'm going to see my photo on eBay 30 seconds after back. But I was also running into a handful of successes just with 4x6s. Or 5x7s, off-size photos that aren't going to. And speaking of 4x6, when we were talking about bad experiences, I think you were thinking of my story about Byron Bitts signing a 4x6, where he asked me if it was going to be on eBay, and it's like, dude, if I sold this after fees, I couldn't even buy a coffee across the street at Dunkin' Donuts to wait for you to sign another one because it's a 4x6. But I sent 5x7s because the printer I was using at home when I decided to try to print stuff at home, I just wasn't getting quality out of an 8x10. So I sent Mike Tomlin, I sent James Harrison, I sent Asante Samuel, I sent them 5x7s, and figuring it's only going to cost me a few cents. Oh, I like those. Those are really, wonder what nice guy sent you those. That was
I know. I don't know. He's a pretty good dude.
Yeah, if I can find the right size, I will send it. And so I get stuff back from people that might not normally send. I got my 5x7 signed by James Harrison, and it matches every comparison that I could do. Tomlin signed one for me. It matched everything Mike Tomlin, signed. But I do some really offbeat stuff as well because I think I've mentioned I do like calendar pages, and
Yeah,
really,
that's a good one. I've done that before.
really weird things like that. But it's Bill Coward, not too long after his wife passed away, I had a Steelers calendar, and he was on one of the pages, and I was like, talked about his wife and cancer and how I felt bad and blah blah blah. And he signed the calendar page, and thank you for such, thank you for the kind words, Bill Coward. No one's going to send stuff like that unless you're a fan.
Right.
I think some of my returns are because I'm sending these things that are offbeat. They're not going to be on eBay. If they're on eBay, they're only going to be, it's going to cost you more to put it on than it's going to what you're going to get out of it. And some of it, even like the calendar pages, who's going to have that except a fan? So but I look for really little quirky, junky stuff sometimes like that, and it works. It works in my favor. I'm not always
Oh,
odds. I'm
the
not always.
more you separate yourself and think outside the box from the other 500 Joe schmoes that are doing the same thing, is gonna be the better off you are with getting a response, at least a possible authentic response, opposed to And if you're gonna get a response because everybody gets a response, you might get one that's a little bit better than the most because they may spend the extra time to respond to your letter and write something back to you.
Yeah.
Put a couple extra freebies in there, whatever, just to kind of go a little above and beyond because they know you're a true fan or a true supporter or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the big difference between what you do and like what I do. I feel like because I've had such great success, and then the person who does the form letter that all they do is take out the person's name and put a new name in there. The exact same form, And I mean, it is what it is. I mean, like, I'm not here to tell what anybody does the right or wrong way. I mean, you just got to do what you got to do. Whatever you think's best, you do you, But I think it's an opportunity for all of us to learn a little bit extra. If you go the little extra mile, a lot of these people, especially the ones who are no longer really active anymore, who really do have downtime to kind of sit around inside, they notice those things. Now, we go back to the people who might be doing stuff like plays or musicals or whatever. They probably just signing away, just whatever, because it fills downtime.
Yeah.
So they probably could care less. But the guys that are slowing down, that aren't working anymore, they're not playing anymore, they might be paying attention a little bit better. So if you do a little bit extra than the minimum, you might get a nice response in return.
Yeah. Yeah. It's 5 minutes of research can go a long way, especially like you said, to some of the guys who are just, now they're getting flooded with stuff.
Right.
And they might, and if they have 100 letters in front of them, they might not want to sign all of them, but if they read it, you might be the one that they sign for because you actually show that you're a fan of, of them or a fan of the game. And like you said, you're not just some form letter Joe Schmo who's
right. And I think that's the biggest thing that we could take away from a lot of this stuff is that, doing the extra work pays off, I mean, is it going to pay off every time? No, not at all. Because you have some people who just, not because they don't want to, they're just too busy. That's just the reality of it. But, a lot of these other people, if you don't set the bar that everybody you're going to send to is like Jennifer Aniston and Sandra Bullock, if you're willing to like pick lesser people, not as far as lesser people and like them as people, but lesser celebrity, their lights slightly more dimmed, or they've had their moment in the sun, or the sports star who's retired and have walked away from the game and no longer active, then you're going to get a lot better response, generally speaking. Like, I've gotten a lot of Reds plays when I was doing a lot of TTMs a couple of years ago, guys that never signed through the mail, and I think I've shared this with you before, or at least on the channel, guys that like never sign. It seems like you always see like RTS, refuse to sign, no longer an address, sitting back, return to send, all that stuff. Like, I'll try those addresses because you never know once in a while. Because you'll say like one person will get a response, but then 4 other people won't. So it's like, I think that person, they pick and choose who they sign for. So, if they know who the person who's the actual fan and supporter, and they know who the guys is going around just trying to get autographs. So I'll send a lot of those guys and I get responses back. I'll say, my son is, plays travel baseball. He's been doing it for X amount of time. He's, we're big fans of, the Reds or whatever. And, getting an autograph from you would be really cool for him. And I'll just send in a couple cards.
Yep.
and I almost always get a card back from those guys. And though the cool thing is, a lot of them will send back a letter for my son, you know, and then the next guy will get a return to sender because they don't want to deal with the guy who sends 16 cards to get autographed, you know.
It's so many. You have no idea these people, and for anybody sending out, or if when they get upset at some of these players. I mean, Jerry Kramer's agent telling me about, and I think I mentioned the story with you before too, where it was Jerry Kramer's agent. They get a package, they open it up, it's 2 jerseys and a Sharpie. There's no note, there's no letter, there's no nothing. And they looked up the return address. He was, because I was driving him back to the airport after the show, and he goes, it was a sports store. They weren't even smart enough to put their home address. They put the store's address. He goes, it's a sports store. He goes,
unbelievable.
So
unbelievable.
They didn't even put in like a return envelope or nothing for postage. They sent 2 jerseys and a Sharpie and said, here you go. He goes, so, we didn't send it back. We kept the jerseys, and, too bad for them. But,
yeah, so they sent it back and receipt that said SOL.
Yeah.
But the crazy thing is, to kind of say what you're saying is like, and this is something that now probably would be frowned upon. It was definitely back then, but I think people were it was so shocking. People didn't know how to respond to it. And I guess the celebrities, I'm sure they were probably put out by it, but at the same time, they're making money off these people. But like a thing that I was noticing at some of these like film conventions or autograph shows for like, movie stars or television stars, there'll be like people, I am not even kidding you, kind of like you said with the jersey thing, there'll be people that show up, I'm not even kidding, in a flat cart or like a little red radio wagon, and they're pulling it through the convention hall, and it's filled to the top with like, big action figures, and it's still in the boxes, like, 8x10s, posters, like masks, machetes, whatever, and it's like 40 items. And then if you're the person behind that schmuck, you're like waiting forever to get an autograph because the celebrity now has to sign 30 different things.
Yep.
And I'm like, a lot of they finally got smart to it and said, if you're going to do that, they're going to do it on their own time on a separate thing, so it's not to slow the line down. Well, you're going to come back in an hour or two and get that. Yeah. But I'm like, people were pulling that little cart, Doug, can you believe that? Like, they have a cart filled to the brim with like whatever. And I'm like what in the world?
You see that? I mean, like I have a cart that I pull it like if I go to a Comic-Con. Sure. But that's because I'm going to see 30 different artists.
Sure.
So
yeah.
I have 30 different things in there for them to, whether it's a comic or a, something. But yeah, you see some of these people, even at a Comic-Con, the biggest complaint, even for the artist, some of these artists don't mind signing, but you have these people pull up with what's called a short box, and it's a tiny box, and it's packed. I want to say it carries like, let's say 100 comics. And you'll have these people that'll sit there and just drop a short box on the table. And sometimes it's on top of some of the prints and things that they're trying to sell. And it's like, yeah, can you sign these? And the artist is, it's irritating because I've been behind some of those guys, and I've been behind artists that'll turn around and be like, yeah, sure. And then start opening the box and signing. And it's like, I'm not going to stand here for a half an hour. I'll come by.
Right.
But then there's also the artist that'll sit there and be like, there's people behind you. Can you come by later? When, and I've talked to so many artists about that too, where it's like, I see it and I hate it because I'll chat with the artist, and as soon as somebody comes by, I shut up and move. And they think I'm leaving, and it's like, no. We're just chatting. That person next to you might be a sale.
Right. Sure.
You deal with them. I can come. I can wait.
Right.
Come back. We're just shooting the breeze. But I'm not going to block your sales. So when you see people walk up with these short boxes and drop it on a table, and there's 3 or 4 people behind them, it's like those are 3 or 4 sales that you might lose because nobody's going to want to sit there and wait for you to open the plastic, pull it out of the sleeve, sign it, put it back, or put it to the side, and let the
Right.
other person put it. They don't have time because signing some of these short balls, that can be so time consuming. And there's some,
Right.
I've gone back, and some artists I haven't. But it's
Sure.
it's totally the same. Yeah, it happens at all of these shows. You get all of these people that are trying to, and especially with social media now. I do it sometimes where if I'm going to a show, I'll put it out on some of the groups I belong to, saying, "Hey, I'm going. If if you want anything, let me know."
Right. You've done that for me multiple times, and usually I just don't have the money, or it's just not it's not something that I have to have. But I appreciate you always thinking
Yeah,
about me because you just never know. I'm sure eventually you're gonna tell me about somebody. I'm gonna be like, oh yes, I'll PayPal you the
yeah,
money right now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
whatever. So I'm sure it's bound to happen.
Yeah, when I
But
think of,
yeah,
like when I saw the Red signing with, like, it was a Barry Larkin and a couple of these other guys, it's like, oh, Jason might want that one.
yeah, 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 and definitely. I mean, like I said, it definitely can happen. Like I said, at this point, it'd have to be for me a pretty rare, unusual opportunity that you're not going to see come up. Because, like I said, I mean, as you know, a lot of these guys charge more than what you can get it on eBay now. They think that
Yeah,
an autograph you can get, like even you said Barry Larkin, you get a Barry Larkin autograph for 20-30 bucks on eBay probably, but you have to pay him, at that event for like 50 or 60, maybe even more. So I mean, if you're patient, you can find it cheaper online and it'd be an authentic autograph or whatever.
yeah,
So for me, a lot of times it has to be something pretty unusual or unique scenario. Like I said, like a Japanese ball player who's only going to be available or in town for a short time or something. That'd be interesting, or a
yeah,
celebrity like we're talking about Richard Dreyfuss. I get a chance to meet somebody like him who's been like in so many like huge films over the years. Like
yeah.
that'd be cool to get him, But stuff like that, like that kind of stuff, yeah. But if it's just like, Chris Sabo, I'm like, I'm good on that. I can do Chris, whatever. So,
Yeah, yeah.
but anyways, well, hey man, we're heading towards 2 hours, so I think we'll
Uh,
wrap it up. So yeah, it's been a long time. We had a good time. My phone's gonna die here in a few minutes too. So, but I really appreciate you hanging out, Doug.
No, man. Thanks for having me. I know it's it's been a little hectic here with us going on vacation and coming back
Sure.
from vacation, and then the kids are going to see mom. So you had asked me a few times about going on, and
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, and then no, I can't, and yeah, and then
I,
and then
I,
you know,
I
but,
totally get it, man.
but your patience is much appreciated. So
Yeah, for sure, dude. Well, hey, man, we'll do it again maybe in a couple of weeks. We'll hop on. We'll have a topic or two, and we'll just kind of go from there. But I appreciate you taking the time out of your evening to chit chat for a bit. So we'll do it again soon.
no problem. I look forward to it.
All right, man. Take care. You have a good
All right,
one. See you
see you later.
now.
Bye.
All right. Bye.